Welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast, a podcast where we teach speakers how to land paid speaking engagements and corporate contracts. Each week, we deliver high-quality content that teaches you how to level up your speaking business. Be sure to join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group after having your mind blown by this information-filled episode. Now, here's your host, Ashley Kirkwood, lawyer and professional speaker. This is the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast.
Hello, Speak Your Way to Cash family. I'm back with Dr. Janice Gassam, and she's going to talk to us about how she built her powerhouse diversity and inclusion speaking practice. I'm thrilled to speak with her, and she listens to the show, y'all. So she is really prepared for this interview and is going to drop some major gems. Just a bit about her background. She's done TEDx Talks, authored over 150 Forbes articles, and has spoken for Yale, PayPal, Venmo, H&M, and various other companies that we've all either heard of, worn their products, or utilized in some way. So we are really in for a treat today. So welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm good. I'm really excited to be here. As I told you, I'm like, I went and binge listened to all of your episodes, and I'm really excited to be here, and I came prepared.
Yes, we're so thrilled to have you. So tell us a little bit about how you started your practice.
Sure. So I have a background in organizational psychology. So I have a master's and a Ph.D. in industrial organizational psychology, which is just the psychology of the business or an organization. And when I was in my PhD program, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of knew I wanted to go the training teacher route. Both of my parents are educators. My mom was the French teacher in high school and middle school, and my dad was a finance professor. So I guess teaching has always been in my blood, but I didn't know what area I sort of wanted to go into. And I was a tutor throughout my PhD program. And then I took a diversity and inclusion course. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is like everything I've always wanted. And a couple years ago, well, I guess almost 10 years ago now, I started a YouTube channel where I talked about race and the Black community and just, topics around race. So race has always been, I guess, and diversity has always been something that's important to me and that I've been interested in. So I think it just kind of evolved from there. And then as I was finishing up school, people would ask me to be on like diversity panels. My dissertation was on hiring bias. So when you're applying for a job, if there are certain characteristics and factors of your background that will prevent you from being hired. So people knew that bias in selection and hiring was what I wrote my dissertation on. So I started getting asked to do panels on diversity and inclusion. And then at some point I was like, why am I doing all of these things for free? I could be like, create this and craft this into a business because I love to travel and I love to speak. And then I was given an opportunity to teach a college course, and it just sort of like picked up from there. And I had to do research to figure out, because one of the most challenging things when you start consulting is figuring out how much you should charge. So I didn't know myself. I've had, a lot of ups and downs with that, where I did a lot of valuable work for free I undervalued myself. So it's definitely been a learning experience, but that's sort of how I got started in doing diversity and inclusion consulting.
And what does that look like? Because for a lot of people, it's hard to even know when you're undervaluing yourself when you don't have a base for what the market will charge. And speaking is weird because different companies will pay different things for different experiences. And so it's really tough to figure that out in the beginning. So when you first got started, you mentioned you did some free work, and then you mentioned you were undervaluing yourself. So what were you charging in that realm when you were like, this is probably way too low?
Right.
It's going to work.
So about a year and a half ago, a company in Amsterdam reached out to me and asked me to do a series of webinars. And I think it was at that point that I realized I was undervaluing myself, because I gave them my price, which I said was $1,000. to do one webinar, which is what I thought it was. And then they came back and said, well, we want you to do 4 webinars and we don't have a budget. And what I'm sure you find this a lot, Ashley, and I've really put my foot down lately and said, I don't do exposure for work. It's kind of like, we'll give you exposure. And then if you could do this for us, and it's like, I'm at the point in my career where I feel like I've done enough things for exposure. So it was like one of those situations where they really were pushing back against paying me. And they said, well, we don't have the money. It would be good exposure. And I said, it absolutely would be, but you're a small company in Amsterdam. So I do need to get some sort of payment. So we talked, we went back and forth, and they ended up agreeing to only pay me $500 for 4 webinars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had told my husband, and he was just like, I don't know speaking, but that seems super duper low. And I think it was at that moment.
Get you together. Like they will get you together. He
was like, Janice, that is not like, and I was like, well, I'm doing it for exposure. And then I was at that moment that, and it wasn't their fault. It was my fault. I should have supported myself more. But when I started doing it at the beginning, I was either not charging or charging $1,000 because I was like, well, I still feel like I'm a novice speaker. Mind you, I've been teaching since 2015. So I've been teaching for 5 years, and I'm in, I joined Toastmasters in 2017, and I feel like I'm a pretty strong speaker. And
were you a doctor at that point as well?
When I started teaching, I was not. When I started Toastmasters, I was right before I defended my dissertation. And I just felt like I needed something to challenge me. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was joining Toastmasters, because it really improved my speaking. But as of lately, I would say within the last year, I've definitely realized I've undervalued and underpriced my services, because I went to a conference last May, and I met this woman who was like a coach, and she coaches women she's like a mindset coach. And when I told her at the time, when I met with her, my rate was $3,000. And she was like, so you've done a TEDx, you have a Ph.D., you write for Forbes, and you're only charging $3,000. You should be charging at least $10,000. And she's like, I know that's a lot for you to hear, but once you start believing that you're worth that much money and you assert yourself, when you go to these companies, they're going to pay you that. And I just did not believe, I still am like 10,000. That seems like so much, but I've definitely upped my rate. And I had a situation, ironically, just this past Friday, where a large consulting firm that I was really excited about speaking at, it's one of the big 4, one of the largest consulting firms in the world, asked me to speak for Black History Month. And I negotiated my rate. They were only willing to pay me. So I said, they said, can you speak for 20 minutes? I said, sure. And I said, for 20 minutes, because of the exposure I'm going to get at this company, I'm so excited. I said, I'll do it for $2,000. They came back and said, well, we can't do $2,000. Mind you, this is one of the largest.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
In the world. I'm doing a talk for Black History Month. You don't want to pay me equitably, and you're one of the largest consulting firms in the world, a name that everyone knows. So I can't. They said, can we do it for $1,000? I said, fine. In my head, I'm like, I just want to be able to. This is great exposure, and when people ask me where I've spoke at, now I can give this company. So they came back and said,
were they willing to give you like the video, the reviews and all of that and make it public? So
a few days before the speaking engagement, they sent me an NDA. And the NDA, I have a close friend of mine who's a lawyer, and I have her review all of my contracts beforehand. And I didn't even have to send this contract to her. I looked at it myself, and it said, I can't use the company logo. Yep. I can't even call this company my client or my customer.
Yep.
And I can't even take a picture at the company doesn't have any, like when you go into their office in New York, I think their Chicago office is the only office where they have their logo. They are very secretive. They don't want anyone knowing who their clients or customers were, who they've worked with. So in the NDA, it specifically said, I cannot use them, call them a client. And I was like, well, why is this NDA being sent to me 2 days before my speaking engagement? I agreed to do this in November. I should have been sent the NDA then, because I would have really pushed back on paying me a lower rate, because I was assuming I was going to get that exposure and not be able to, say this is where I've spoken. And I had to turn that speaking engagement down because I was like, $1,000 is nothing. And when I've been speaking for a higher rate, $1,000, and I can't even call you a client or a customer. Yeah. And then they modified the NDA and came back and said, well, we had our legal team look at it, and we said that we're going to let you post it on your social media, but we have to approve it first. And I just was like, this isn't worth it. I think that you're not even paying me equitably when you're a huge $1 billion company, and you can't even pay a Black History Month speaker more than. I just was like, I can't. So I
can believe it. I can believe it because I had a similar negotiation with a very large insurance company. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, first off, I've had the insurance. I know I'm like, you're at least getting more from my family than this.
Exactly.
It's so amazing because sometimes people look at the magnitude of the company or the size of the stage, and they assume that means that the paycheck will be in line. And most of the time it won't, especially when it comes to, unfortunately, I think, diversity topics and topics surrounding inclusion. And I had a company reach out. It was a nonprofit recently, and they have a budget. And they were just like, yeah, we really want to do this work. We really care about it. And I was like, I want to be really, really honest with you because I think you're a good person and this is an individual at the company. And I was like, what companies care about, they pay for. Quickly and in cash. You know what I mean? Like they pay for these things. Like you can write me a check, but it's going to be you're going to pay for what you value. So if you tell your employees you value diversity, you value inclusion, then that means that everything that goes along with that, anything that can move that initiative forward, you will pay for. You will not underpay. You will not, put it on the back burner. I've had companies call me about Black History Month, February 25th. I'm like, ma'am, you have 4 days to get this together.
Right.
So it's an afterthought. It comes at the same time every year.
Absolutely. So it's like, it's so ironic that you sent me the NDA, which I think is just, I've never been asked to sign an NDA by any of the companies I've done speaking engagements for. So that was first for me.
I was always asked to sign an NDA.
But don't you get the NDA when you agree to do the speaking engagement?
Yeah, you do.
And not 2 days before the event. I was like, everyone dropped the ball, and it was just funny because it was a talk on microaggressions during Black History Month, and you're underpaying your Black History Month speaker and giving her the NDA too. It was just so, the irony of it, I was like, wow, this is insane.
And so to be clear for people listening, if you are doing a 20-minute keynote or a 30-minute keynote, I don't care how long the keynote is, your base rate could still be $5,500, $75. It could be whatever it is. Because the time it takes you to prepare, to research, to do the pre-event call, the post-event consult, all of that stays the same. That 20 minutes is up to them. I would charge the same whether it's 20 minutes or an hour. But if you only want 20 minutes, it's still going to take me hours to get there. I'm going to have to sit through whoever else you have speaking. I'm going to, this isn't like you're not paying me by the hour. You're paying for the value.
Right. Exactly.
And the experience that comes with me speaking.
Hey guys, it's Ashley Kirkwood here, and I know this is an amazing interview. And if you are someone who is interested in taking your speaking career to the next level, then do I have something for you? Okay, I need you to go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. That's ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay. The link is also in the show notes that you can grab the Speak Your Way to Cash live replay, which has 7 modules, a ton of information about how you can start speaking your way to cash. Now, This training is absolutely action-packed, phenomenal. It has additional resources. It has templates. It has a podcast pitch template, a college pitch template, something you can send to media outlets to get on television. It has everything you need to develop a sales strategy, a press strategy, and a plan to skyrocket your speaking career. And it is crazy affordable, okay? So head on over there right now, ashleynicolekirkwood.com/speaker SYWTC live replay, and grab your copy today. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Exactly. And I think for me, and maybe a lot of your listeners might experience this as well, I was so excited about this opportunity that I was afraid if I told them I wasn't lowering my rate that they would say, no, we don't want to do this. But now that I realize it, I should have really pushed back because they came to me. I didn't pitch them. So you already saw the value in me for you to be coming to me as one of the largest consulting firms in the world. You're coming to me and asking me to participate in this. So I think it's like a different thing when you have more leverage. I feel like when they've come to you, so you shouldn't compromise on your rate. And one of your guests, I think it was Matthew Pollard. I think he was the one who said, when he started speaking, he was firm on his rate, and all of a sudden they had $5,000 to pull out from wherever. So when you're firm about your rate, they're going to either they have it or they don't. But I've never had a situation where I told someone a rate and I was firm in it and they said, no, we don't have it. I was firm in it and they said, we can't do this engagement. I've never had that happen to me before. So I don't know why I was. And again, I was like, I don't want to fumble this opportunity. In the end, I didn't end up speaking there anyway, because of the NDA and how they handled everything. But you have to be really firm in your rate. And it doesn't matter. I've told companies, it doesn't matter if you have 300 people in the room. It doesn't matter if you're asking me to speak for 3 hours, for 2 hours, for whatever. The preparation that it takes, the time that it takes that I'm taking away from my full-time job, because I teach full-time. So it's like I'm taking time away from. So this has to be more profitable for me. And if I wanted to teach an extra class, for example, I would get $4,000. So if I'm speaking, I need to at least get $4,000 because otherwise, why don't I just go teach an extra class? If I think about it from a money standpoint, that's really how I feel about that. So it's important to stay firm in your rates. And if they're not able to do it, they're not able to do it. But more than likely, they will be able to accommodate you in your rate.
Yeah. And the reality is it's not a great opportunity if the rate isn't right because you can't get repeatable business on a bad rate. So if you do it for $1,000 and they call you back next month and they want another $1,000 speech, that means you're going to be doing 12 speeches for $12,000 when you could have done like 2 speeches for $10,000. So you just can't, you don't want to compromise early because it's very difficult to renegotiate. And I've been in that situation where I've charged like $1,000 less than I'd usually charge. And they're like, oh, but this is life-changing. We want you to come back again and again and again. And I'm just like, all right. Like now I have to tell you the truth. That rate is not going to work. It is a new year. This isn't going to work. And they will stay. But it would have been a lot better if from the outset I would have told them, look, my rate is $7,500. If I come in and do this, it is a one-time thing so that you can see the value, but I can never give you this rate again. Are you okay with that? Like there's ways to negotiate that at the outset, but you do want to make sure you're always foreshadowing that if you do something for a lower rate, there's a reason and it won't happen in the future. And then you have to stick firm to that. It just can't happen in the future. So that's a really good point on rates. And it's a good point that you didn't pitch them, they pitched you. So do you have a process by which you're pitching these corporations?
So no, after I listened to your podcast, I would say 99% of my speaking engagements, they've come to me. They've reached out to me. So I actually have an Excel. It's very interesting. I'm looking at the Excel spreadsheet I created after I listened to one of your episodes. And the majority of my leads come from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn or my website. So someone finding me on LinkedIn or finding an article I've written, and then they reach out to me through my website or they reach out through LinkedIn. So I've really put my focus on, I have a Twitter and I have a Facebook. I don't get on either of them that much because what I found is my leads are coming from LinkedIn primarily. Some of them not so much in Instagram, but if someone finds me on Instagram and then finds me on LinkedIn, that could become a lead. So that's primarily where I am on Instagram and LinkedIn, but they're really coming from LinkedIn. So I've put focus and I've spent money and resources developing my LinkedIn so that I'm easier to find by these companies and these corporate leaders. And actually, I had an opportunity to, H&M flew me out for a conference and they paid me to be a moderator for a panel. And that was because of LinkedIn. So I think every opportunity I've gotten, for the most part, every big opportunity, even my TEDx, speaking for Forbes, all of those things are because of my LinkedIn. So I put a lot of time and effort into my LinkedIn and making sure that it's helping me generate leads.
And what does that look like, generating leads on LinkedIn? Because is it that you're putting out, I found you on LinkedIn, so I think your LinkedIn is great. So you're putting out valuable content. Did you invest in a LinkedIn coach? What does it look like to invest in LinkedIn so that it can have inbound leads coming to your door?
Aside from yours, one of my favorite podcasts is called Speaking Your Brand with Carol. Yeah. And so one of her episodes, she has a partner she works with, Diane Diaz, and they did a webinar on how to market yourself on LinkedIn as a speaker. And at that point, I felt like I was already strong in LinkedIn, but I paid for the webinar and I learned different tips and tricks and things like that. I've attended classes in New York City on like how to boost up your LinkedIn. So I've invested resources and money and time into like focusing on LinkedIn. But for me, it's just making sure I use the right keywords, because I think when someone's searching for a speaker, they're looking for maybe diversity speaker. So making sure in my headline, I have diversity in speaker, and in my bio, I have that, making sure that I'm putting everything relevant to my craft on there. So I've become obsessive with, like, anytime I do a speaking engagement, whether it's paid or unpaid, I post it on LinkedIn, because the more people see you doing something, like, people have hit me up and said, wow, you're really staying true to that diversity and inclusion thing. You just did a talk. In January, I did a talk with a group of brewers in Connecticut. So the brewing industry, it's not an industry I ever thought about, but, you know, these brewing industries that make craft beer, they're lacking diversity. And they had an issue where a Michigan brewery shut down because of racial discrimination. So they have a really big issue. So they asked me to come in. So people were messaging me like, wow, you spoke to a bunch of, you know, white guys on diversity and inclusion in the beer industry. So making sure for me, what that looks like is posting a lot about my wins, whether that's a speaking engagement or an article I've written. So just being my number one fan and advocate. And as far as like the opportunity to write for Forbes, I started to beef up my LinkedIn in 2017 when I was out of my Ph.D. program. I was jobless and I wanted to get into diversity and inclusion in the corporate space, but no one was hiring me because I had no formal experience except teaching. So I was like, I'm going to work on my LinkedIn. I saw an opportunity to speak at a conference in New York on LinkedIn. I applied and they accepted my proposal. And at the conference, and Adam Grant was he's the author. He's one of the keynote speakers there. So I was like, oh, this is exciting that there's going to be a lot of important people here. So I did a panel with other diversity and inclusion professionals who had tons of experience. I didn't really have a lot. I just studied the diversity and inclusion. After the panel, I got an email from an editor at Forbes, and she said, I saw you at this panel. I loved what you said and what you talked about. Are you interested in writing for Forbes? And I was like, yes, of course. And at the time, the only articles I had ever written were on LinkedIn. So she was like, can you send me some samples of writing? I didn't have a Medium account. I didn't have any of these other accounts. everything was on LinkedIn, and I had maybe 4 articles on LinkedIn. I sent her my articles on LinkedIn, and she's like, these are perfect. And that's how I essentially had the opportunity to become a contributing writer, is because I had content on LinkedIn. I don't know if I didn't have that content on LinkedIn, how else she would have been able to see samples of my writing. So I think LinkedIn has been like, even the H&M opportunity, someone reached out to me from H&M, and I thought it was fake. I was like, because her photo looked like it could have been like photoshopped. So she's like, I work at H&M, and I think she's based in Sweden. And I was like, this seems kind of fake. And she's like, we would love to fly you out and pay you to be part of this panel on diversity in the fashion industry. And I was like, I don't know if this is real. So I connected with her. We went back and forth, and then she emailed me, and I was like, okay, she has H&M in her email, so maybe this is real. And then as we started talking more and more, they're like, we need your passport information because we're going to purchase your ticket. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have an opportunity to go to Germany, never been to Germany, because she found me on LinkedIn and because I was active on my LinkedIn. So every major opportunity I've gotten, LinkedIn. Even my TED Talk, I found the organizers of that TED Talk on LinkedIn, and I was like badgering each of them, like, are you still looking for speakers? And one reached out to me and she said, we are, send a video to this email address and we'll consider you. And so literally everything has been because of LinkedIn. So I think being active on LinkedIn, I try to post everything that I'm doing on LinkedIn, because other people are I think LinkedIn has the organic reach that very few other sites have. Instagram doesn't have that kind of reach. Twitter doesn't have that kind. Someone who's like a third connection of yours can see something and can see everything you're doing, can connect with you. So LinkedIn to me is like, I'm such a LinkedIn evangelist. I just love the platform. So I think you really need to like beef up your LinkedIn. I think for speakers, it's great.
Yes, I agree with everything that you said. And you dropped so many gems about LinkedIn, keywords, you guys, if you didn't hear that, putting your keywords in LinkedIn, making sure your header makes sense, making sure they're using those terms to Google you, and look at your analytics. One of the books that I read in one day, was LinkedIn Unlocked. I don't have the name of the author, but if you type in LinkedIn Unlocked,
I'll have to check it out.
It was a really good book. You may already know, I felt like for me, because I use LinkedIn a lot, it was great. The refreshers were great. I read it in a day. It was great tips. If you all are just getting started though, I think you'll find it even more valuable because it breaks down, okay, do this. This is a tip. Make sure this is going on. So you do want to make sure there's so much power in LinkedIn, and you can even be more aggressive with it. So you can request diversity and inclusion directors of these companies. You can request HR directors of these companies, request the job titles of the folks that are typically hiring you. But that's phenomenal. And the Forbes opportunity is just like a golden ticket, because like everyone would not love for someone from Forbes to say, hey, would you like to write for us? Sure, ma'am. I would love that. Okay. And then you just send your LinkedIn articles and they're like, you're a genius. You're in. Write for Forbes. Thank you very much. I mean, that within itself it builds so much credibility.
Yeah.
So even
I think it's
all
like
that experience,
absolutely,
so much credibility.
A lot of it is putting yourself out there, because I tell my students to get on LinkedIn. My students they're graduate students in HR looking for HR jobs. And I'm like, are you on LinkedIn? They're like, yeah, but I'm not really looking for a job. I'm like, you don't need to be looking for a job to boost up and market yourself on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the key to your job opportunities. I have a friend who really wanted to work at Deloitte, and she was transitioning out of the Army. And she was like, guys, I really want to work for Deloitte. I don't know how I could. Do you know anyone who works there? I did not know anyone that I was close with. I looked into my LinkedIn connections and I just searched Deloitte. And one person came up and I messaged him, just cold messaging. He's never met me. He must have connected with me, because usually I'll accept everyone on LinkedIn, but I usually only reach out to people I've seen speak or I know them somehow. So I reached out and I said, hey, how are you? I have a close friend who's transitioning out of the Army, who's looking for a role at Deloitte. Do you have any tips that you can offer? I didn't say, please help her find a job, because a lot of people reach out and say, please help me find this job. Please No, I just said, do you have any tips for how she can best position herself for a role at Deloitte? He put me in touch with a recruiter who helps people who transition out of the military into Deloitte. I sent her contact information. They connected. They enrolled her in some program. And now she's working at Deloitte as a consultant.
That's amazing.
That is the power. I did not even know this person. And I just reached out. So I think like for everyone listening, I get a lot of messages where people are asking for things where they're like, hey, could you feature me in Forbes? And it's like, you're not providing value to the other person. So if you want something, you have to write a compelling pitch. And I know you have a lot of episodes on how to pitch yourself. So really making sure you're developing a compelling pitch, because 95% of the pitches I get in my inbox are just like, hey, my daughter won the spelling bee, feature her in Forbes. And it's like, this isn't, obviously you don't even know what I write about, because this isn't quite my domain. Yeah, I'm no lie. Actually, like I got an email, like my daughter won the spelling bee. She would be a really great person to feature for Forbes. And I'm like, have you read any of my articles? This is not like my domain. So it's like making sure that you're trying to provide value for other people is so, so important, because I didn't say, hey,
give them something first. Like, hello, don't be selfish.
Yeah. And I think most people are just like on LinkedIn, or it's just when they send you pitches, they might be like, actually put me on your podcast. And it's like, I'm sorry, who are you? What value?
We're not speakers, which is so weird, because we only feature speakers, or we do like the coaching episodes. But I get emails all the time from people who are like, I would love that. I'd be perfect for your podcast. And I'm like, you wouldn't though. You may be perfect.
Yeah. And it's like, what are you, a speaker? What value would you provide to the listeners? And I think people don't think as much as like, what value can you provide to someone? I think you would land more pitches and more opportunities if you're able to demonstrate your value.
And give the value first. I mean, if you're reaching out to someone, because LinkedIn has become slightly spammy on the sales side. So I get a lot of messages from people who are like, hey, if you practice federal trial law, then you could do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I do trademark law and I do employment law. So I can't utilize your services. I don't go to trial anymore. And I basically say that in the first line of my LinkedIn bio. Former trial lawyer. Now
it's like, obviously you haven't read my bio. You don't pay attention to like those small details.
Yeah. And I know for some people it's just a numbers game. So I totally respect the hustle of selling. Like there is just some of it is just a numbers game. Like you just have to get your stuff out there to as many people as possible. But if you can be more strategic, LinkedIn really is your place. Because I don't think I've been interviewing HR directors for the past couple of weeks just about, I wanted to launch a new program in companies talking about the love communication method, which I came up with. And I teach companies how to communicate better surrounding difficult conversations, diversity, management, just difficult conversations, period. And one of the HR directors that I wanted to talk to more HR directors to launch this program. So I went on LinkedIn and I found all the HR directors who also attended Northwestern for undergrad or any type of grad school, because that's where I attended law school. And I was asking them, what do you dislike most about the sales pitches that you get, or how many sales pitches are you getting? Some of them said hundreds a day. Some said 30 to 40 a day. And then all of them said they don't like the spammy emails that are just about the person. They don't like that at all. So I decided to do a complimentary webinar for HR directors, just walking them through some of the new legal requirements as it relates to sexual harassment. And there's also going to be legal requirements as it relates to hair, as you probably know. So talking about that, they were like, oh yeah, now that'll be good because I want to learn about that. It's free. I can just show up. And then if you need additional guidance, you can hire me afterwards. But then they self-select into the webinar. They self-select into speaking with me later. And that is what one of our podcast episodes was about. It was like how to use those free webinars to attract corporate clients. But you do need to give something first, because almost all of them said they get so many pitches and they hate spammy emails asking them to like buy something when you don't even know if they care about the problem. And some of them do not care. I've had other people tell me, HR directors, we don't have a diversity issue. All of our employees are very happy, which is probably 100% a lie. But I do hear that. Or people are like, diversity? Oh no, we would never self-segregate, which is how they affiliate, the employee resource groups, which are highly effective, but some people think it's like self-segregation. So if you don't know how these companies view what you offer, you're wasting your time talking to them about your services.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough to, I don't know, I found it challenging to market myself, not to companies. It seems like leadership in companies recognize the value of D&I workshops. But I think in institutions and universities, it's been challenging because as a professor myself, I think a lot of professors have an air about themselves like they're, I don't want to say better than other people, but that you're highly educated. So it's like, I don't discriminate. I don't need this diversity and inclusion training. And I heard about one of my close friends had an incident where she is one of the few Black people in this university. And someone pointed to her and basically said, we have diversity. Look at her. And this was in a diversity training to basically help the professors understand not to just, I guess, get rid of candidates who didn't get tenure at their previous institutions, because there's racial and gender discrimination and bias that is systemic and that makes women and minorities less likely to receive high marks from their student evals. So it was just a basic training like that. But I think when you're speaking with professors, it's, I think, very challenging because when you're highly educated, sometimes I think it's harder to get through to those types of people versus like in a corporate space. They recognize it. Sometimes they just don't have they say they don't have the budget for these diversity and inclusion training. So I found it's interesting. For me, I found it more challenging in universities and colleges. And I know that's like your specialty is speaking to these schools, but I found that to be challenging. And then their budgets, in my experience, have been more limited than in corporate.
Well, so in the D&I space, I think that people view it very differently. So for colleges, where the value comes in wouldn't necessarily, in my experience, be with the professors, because you're right. If they're tenured, they could care less whether they're racist or not. I mean, because they're tenured. I mean, I've had professors say crazy things, but they're tenured. So there's nothing that's going to happen to them. And that system is kind of set up for the prestige hierarchy. It's just not conducive a lot of times to change. So I don't really train professors. Where I see a lot of movement is in the staff and in the students. So the staff typically recognizes that they want their students to, make it an accommodating atmosphere. They want their students to be trained on diversity every single year during orientation. And if you can do it in a fun way, then they're all for it and they have budgets. But that would be through the student services department, not through like the provost or the HR director of the school. And the professors, I don't really talk to the professors. I remember going through the process of, there was a school that invited me to apply for a tenured teaching position, but I had already had my own firm and I was going through the process and the dean really wanted me to teach at this particular school. So she had taken me to breakfast. She was like, we're going to work on your job talk. We're going to do all this stuff. And she was like, but I'll be honest, you would be the youngest professor we've ever hired. And you would be the only women of color professor that would be on tenure track at this time. And it would be a lot to get the other professors to vote for you to actually do the job talk. Like, graduated top of my class at Northwestern, worked at the biggest law firm in Chicago. The pedigree wasn't a problem, but the professors wouldn't vote for me to do a job talk because they thought I was too young and too different. And also, I'm very outspoken. So, I'm sure they looked that up, which is a problem. You just have to,
they were like, no, causes too many problems.
And the dean was like, she was with activists in the LGBTQ community, woman, did her own thing, lived her own lifestyle. And she was like, I'm rooting for you. I've already told them they need to vote for you. Some of the professors that knew me voted for me, but it was just like the old boys club of that school was like, we are not bringing in this outspoken Black woman to just do God knows what. Like, the students were lobbying to get me to teach there. And I'm just like, you all got to do you. You came to me. I didn't understand the process was such that if the dean calls you and says, hey, I want you to teach at your school, my thinking is, great. Where do I sign up? And she's like, no. all the professors have to vote, and we need 60% of them to vote at this stage, and then 75% to vote at this stage. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, well,
in academia, so many politics. It's good that you're doing your own thing, you're doing your consulting, you're like, I was
like, if God wants me to do this, then he'll make it happen. But I'm not about to do a whole political campaign to get these older professors.
Exactly. So it's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot.
When I spoke at Yale, I spoke to the staff. So it was emotional intelligence, and it was for the staff, and then students were able to come. So they saw the value in it, definitely. But it was, for me, I found it challenging securing or getting them to pay me my rate at university level, because sometimes it's some of these smaller clubs that are bringing you in. So it just seems like they have more budget concerns.
And there's a big difference between state universities and private universities. And I found that state universities have a larger budget than the private universities. And so you have to look at that. And then the more prestigious the university, the more times they're getting free speakers, because their alum are so prestigious, they'll come back and speak. They're not always great speakers, but they care more about the title of the speaker than the actual ability of the speaker. So there's so many considerations when looking at universities, but you're right. It needs to be like right place, right time, right department has to bring you in. So it can't be like the little bitty department, but it just depends, because sometimes, I'll speak for like a Black student union, and they'll have, they have an unlimited budget. One of the schools I work with, one of the girls came up to me and was like, look, I don't know what they told you about our budget, but it's so big, we'll never spend it this year. So don't worry about money. Literally paid me money to speak to like 5 kids. Like, they did not market it at all. It was just the board. And I'm like, no one's here. They're like, it's fine, we're just going to bring you back. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Like, that's not you. I like the state anyways. I'll be back next week. What do you want to do? So it does depend. And that's why you kind of have to figure out what are some of the trends with the schools that are paying your full rate. And then you operate from that vantage point. So the trends that I've seen in my career have been larger state institutions have the budget.
Hey guys, Ashley Kirkwood here, and I just want to take a moment to invite you out to the Speak Your Way to Cash retreat. If you enjoy this podcast, then you will love the Speak Your Way to Cash 2020 retreat in October, taking place right outside Chicago, Illinois. This retreat is for speakers looking to grow their speaking businesses, land corporate or college clients, and skyrocket their earning potential as a speaker. The in-depth sessions at this multi-day retreat will leave you understanding exactly the high-level client acquisition strategies that I use to land corporate clients. You'll also know the exact steps you need to be taking to grow your current business. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. The sessions are amazing. We talk about selling your signature speech, and we actually have time to go over the techniques of speaking. So if you want to become a better speaker as well as a higher paid speaker, then you should come out. We have another session called TEDx Secrets. Bring your laptops. We are actually going to be looking up and applying to TEDx Talks at the retreat. This session will be critical if you're someone who wants to land a TEDx Talk. Client secrets. You'll hear from actual clients about what they want from speakers just like you, and selling success. We cannot do a retreat without talking about selling. But here's the session that I'm most excited about. We are going to do a vision organizational chart party. That means we are going to have not just vision boards, but vision org boards. We are going to map out how your speaking organization should be staffed, what you want that to look like, and how to use global outsourcing in a way that lets you fund the positions in your company that are currently open. So it's for you if you're ready to level up. If so, meet me in Chicago in October. Reserve your seat now. I'm only taking 30 speakers on this retreat. So go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/2020 retreat. And the best part is you can get early bird pricing now of $550, or you can reserve your seat for just $75 down and make payments until the retreat. That's right. You can either pay in full and get early bird pricing of $550 for the entire 2-day experience, or you can reserve your seat for just $75 down. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you're in the room. It's going to be impactful, and I'm ready to help you start speaking your way to cash in person in Chicago in October. Again, the website is ashleynicolekirkwood.com/2020 retreat. See you soon. Can't wait, guys.
Like, they don't push back about budgets. They haven't even asked me to negotiate the budget, which means my budget is probably a little bit too low. Because if you're not asking, it doesn't, like, they're not phased at all, you know? So I'm just like, I don't think I'm charging enough.
Yeah.
So you want to think about that. And then also with speaking, even with companies, you probably experience this. I want long-term contracts.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to bring me in to do a speech, and then I want you to bring me in to make you accountable to do the work. Like, I don't want to just speak one time. And for the larger schools, you're able to really do that because you have all the different departments right there that need speakers, and they'll refer you to the other departments as well. So that's like the college market. But the corporate market, it's a lot of opportunities to get some of those consulting contracts and do some of that work. Do you do consulting as well?
I do. So, but I don't do a lot. I haven't had a lot of repeat business. So what I do more in corporate is workshops. So I do a lot of workshops, and I don't like to call them trainings. Just because I feel like with these workshops, there is a higher expectation when you call them trainings that, I had someone tell me at the end of the training, they wanted to see that everyone was had no unconscious bias. And I was like, well, I just was like, so when I noticed that even with the wording that I use, I try to stay away from saying this is an unconscious bias training. I try to just say, I call it sometimes an awareness talk or a workshop, because that, I think, lowers the expectation. So I prefer to do talks and keynote speeches, but I get called to do more workshops. And with workshops, it definitely requires more work. And then I'm infusing activities. It's almost like you're designing a lesson plan and you're catering it to it. You're doing a lot more catering it to that specific workplace, and their specific issues. And when I come in to give talks, I get demographic information and how many people are going to be there, but it's not as much work. But I think that I do enjoy doing the consulting and workshops. One of the challenges I experience is managers expect the change to be instant. And they think that after the workshop, employees are going to magically be changed. And the reality of it is, if you're forcing employees to come to a diversity training, it's not going to be as effective as if they're coming voluntarily. And unfortunately, what ends up happening when you allow them to come voluntarily is the only people that come are the ones that don't really need the workshop, are the ones who already
identify as diverse.
Exactly. So that's one of the challenges, is that these fast results are expected. And then the budgetary concerns, because I no longer, if I give you a rate and you don't have it, I no longer, and I've never experienced that where I gave someone my rate to do a consulting at a company and they're like, no, we don't have that in our budget. Sometimes it's kind of the date. They want to do it in the summer, then they push it back. So it's a lot of stuff with the date.
Yeah.
And the logistics of that. But so I really enjoy doing those. And what I've tried to do is just narrow it down to 4 or 5 topics I'm being consistently asked to come in and speak about. And it seems like the unconscious bias is really big right now. I wrote an article and I didn't know it would get as many views as it did. But usually so for Forbes, I track the analytics, and the articles that usually get the most traffic are interviews. So when I interview someone, especially if it's someone who's well known or if it's like an unusual story, that will get a lot of views. Typically when I'm just writing about diversity and inclusion and a particular issue within that, it doesn't get a lot of views. But I wrote this article on why unconscious bias trainings keep failing, and essentially companies aren't addressing some of these systemic issues. So it has almost like 100,000 views, which is big for one of my articles that isn't focused on an interview. So usually my non-interview articles get about 15,000 views. So this was pretty big. So companies have been reaching out to me and saying, oh, we want you to do this sort of, our employees have had unconscious bias training, but we want this to be like a continuation of that. Right. And that wasn't a workshop I was doing a lot before, just because I don't think companies address the systemic issue. So I don't want to come in, waste your time, waste my time, do this workshop, and then it doesn't change your workplace. So I've been asked to come in a lot and sort of address some of those underlying systemic issues. So that's been really fun. I kind of wish right now I teach full time and I do workshops and consulting when I have time and when I'm able to. And the only thing with speaking is it's not consistent. So you might think you have prospects and then something falls through, or there's an issue with the date, or, you have scheduling issues or conflicts. So I always wonder how I would do or how I would feel if I was doing speaking 100% full time and I was teaching part time. But
you would probably just switch your model. So like now you get inbound leads because the way that you speak consistently is you're a professor. Mm-hmm. So that's speaking all the time. That's very consistent. But you would do outreach. You would do you would have a sales process. You do outreach. You'd probably hire someone to help with pitching. Yeah, and then you would have consistent leads, and then your rate would go way up too. Yeah. So you would target people, and then you'd have like $25,000 plus consulting contracts, like 4 or 5 of those. And you would change your business model to make it so that you have the consistent revenue that you need, and you still get to do all the stuff that you really love.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You'll have to come to our speakers retreat.
I'm sorry?
You'll have to come to our speakers retreat.
When is it taking place?
October 2nd. So it's in Chicago. It's October 2nd and 3rd. Mm-hmm. And it is a retreat where we're going to go through that, like how to build the business of it, make it consistent, make sure that you're doing what you love.
Thank you for telling me. I'll have to look into that and make that happen. That would be awesome. Yeah. I think that's what's scary to me is like not having that. You really have to put a lot of effort into the business. Right now I do everything myself. And I do feel like, and I tell my husband, I need a virtual assistant, at least not really for I can handle my emails, but like for my LinkedIn DMs, because I go through and a lot of them are just people saying, hey, can you feature me or whatever. But some of them are legitimate requests and messages, and I don't want to miss anything. And so I'm finding more and more now that I'm like, I need a VA at least just to help me with LinkedIn messages. And just to go through them, and because this is my main source of how I get leads. So so I'm looking into that. I haven't ventured off into that domain yet, but I do recognize I definitely need help in that domain.
Yes. You should 100% get a VA. And you know what? That's why. So this whole speakers retreat, it's like a second part to the Speak Your Way to Cash live training that we have online. But one of the things we're going over is how to leverage the global economy and hiring so that you're able to hire at every level. So regardless of whether you have $300 a month or $3,000 a month, you're able to get someone who can get you to the next level and bring in income and revenue for your business. Because I have someone who helps me with LinkedIn and just like outreach, sending out the connections, fielding the connections that come in, messaging people once they're connections, getting their email.
How do you find that person? Just online?
Yeah. So I used Fiverr to find him, but I have probably 4 or 5 VAs that I work with that do different things. Because they manage different parts of the business. I found that if you're using people, internationally or just in general in the admin space virtually, they need specific tasks. Like you can have an executive assistant who kind of oversees everything, but you need people who like they know every week I am sending out X amount of connection requests and I am accepting X amount of connection requests. Mm-hmm. So it just depends, but we are going to go through that at the retreat as well, because it's something that people struggle with, especially when you're busy. And if you invested consistently in training and having 1 or 2 people to just help you with the admin side of things, your business would explode. Because even the Christmas gifts that we sent out, having an admin help with that brought in business. Like the follow-up emails that people send. So whenever someone hires me, we send out follow-up emails. We do calls with them. And when I know the event is coming back up, we reach back out to them to get rebooked. So our rebooking rate's at like 70-75%. So you just have someone who's like managing that. Like we have not reached out to H&M. They may do this conference again. We need to be back on that stage. Yeah. It could really, really, really help. Like just having someone to help you manage because you've already done so much. And even repurposing all your content. Like that's a job.
And I've been wanting to do it. I definitely need to just think about having someone do that. But it's like someone told me I should be sending out newsletters. And I don't really, because I'm like, that feels kind of spammy to send people out newsletters.
No, they need to know what you're doing.
So someone was like, you need to be sending out. You could take a part of what a Forbes article you've written, put it in a newsletter, send it to your email list. And that's what you need to be doing. And I'm like, I think I worry. I'm like, how do you know you can trust a VA? Like, how do you know this person won't run off with all your, I know
there's services you can use. And I think that that's one of the great things too, is like, there's certain services that we've used that have like connected us with the VA. That service manages it. You have all these password systems you can use. They don't have your password. Mm-hmm. They're just, I've been working with my VA now for a while. She's, going to go on maternity leave around the same time as me. So I'm hiring someone else to come in and fill in for her and I while we're taking a quick leave. But he's very trustworthy, very good, very reliable, just on it. So, I really respect her a lot. But it does take some time. And when you hire people, it is, as we know, because we work with companies on retention. So it's no different when you're a small business. Retention is tough. Like, it takes you making sure the culture is right, you trusting them. And then some people just don't have good work ethic. So you may have to go through 2 or 3. If you use an outside system that connects you with the VA, it's a lot easier because they're managing them as well. And they don't want to be thrown off their platform. So that's where I find a lot of safety. And then I pay through the system pays the VA. So that's like the safest way to do it, especially if you're getting started and have some trust issues with the whole thing. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about in terms of that, definitely. And we can definitely talk more about that.
That's definitely one of my goals is having, because I'm like, like you said, I feel like I don't want to miss any messages. So I do spend a good amount of time looking through, but there are some messages I'll look back and say, oh, I never answered that message. And it was someone asking me about, a diversity dinner that I host or something like that. And they want to bring it to their company. So it's like, you don't want to lose out on money because you're not checking your messages fast enough or consistently enough.
And that's where systems definitely come in, and having calendars where people can just book a call with you to connect and you just send them that call. Or if you have the same script, whenever someone reaches out about diversity, send them this message. They can learn more here. They can learn more about our pricing here. Send them this link. They can book a call with me and my calendar is up to date. Like, having those systems in place is a lot of what we help people with at Speak Your Way to Cash. Because it's like, it's a lot if it's not systematized. And if you do something else, I still have a law firm. So I can't not have them running on systems with help, or else I'll miss opportunities.
That's a lot. Running your firm, doing this podcast, working with clients. It's a lot. About to go on maternity leave.
Yes, managing people and then making sure we don't miss opportunities. And it is a lot. So one thing we didn't talk about that I know our viewers would love to hear is from the people that reach out to you, what are their job titles? Are they HR directors? Are they directors of diversity and inclusion? Who are they?
Mostly managers, HR professionals. I get diversity and inclusion managers, but they hit me up to quote unquote pick my brain. And I hate the "can I pick your brain" question. I actually posted something on LinkedIn about this because what happened in the past is that when I was looking for a job, a manager at a large bank reached out to pick my brain about a new diversity program they wanted to roll out. I thought this would develop into them hiring me to do a workshop or some sort of consulting. So I spent an hour with her on the phone. She was like, we have an issue retaining senior leadership at the company. What can we do? And I was giving her suggestions. And she's like, well, this seems like it would be really, really helpful. What else would you say? Or what would you do if you were in my position? I gave her all this information, all of these resources. And then she's like, well, thank you so much for your time. You've been so helpful. Maybe this could one day turn into some sort of opportunity for you to work with the company. I never heard from her again. And at that point, I was like, wow, I literally wasted an hour of my time, my knowledge, my expertise. So I'm not, I get a lot of messages from diversity managers saying, can I pick your brain? We're rolling out ERGs and we need help. How can we? And I'm just like, I don't have time to sit and answer every single person's question. And I think if you think I'm a valuable resource, the best way you can show me that is by paying me to come in and to help your company do this. So I get a lot of messages from D&I professionals about that, but mostly managers.
You have to be clear because at the management level, they don't even have access to the budget. So they probably don't even know what the budget is or whether or not they have a budget. And there's a way, honestly, I could take something like that from a management or even an employee at a company. And I would just go to the HR director. I would just go to the director of diversity and inclusion and say, hey, I heard you all were rolling this out. I think a member of your team reached out just informationally, just so you know, We do offer a service that can help you with this. If you're interested, you can book a call with me here to learn more about the service. And honestly, you would lead the call. So like for us, we lead those calls. So it's like, hey, what are your goals? All right, excellent. And what are your objectives? Okay, and what's your timeline? All right, and what's your budget to get these done? If we were to break this down into phases, what would you consider phase 1 to be? And we will lead them through the call. But if you let someone else take advantage of that sales call process, they will just like get all the info and they're like, oh, great. Did not work for me. Now I'll take this to my director as my ideas. And,
exactly. So I don't even respond to those messages of, can I pick your brain? Because they don't lead anywhere. And unfortunately, I wish I had time to mentor people because I do get messages from just students and people who are like, how did you get into D&I? And I want to say, literally I share my journey on any podcast I've been on. I share it a lot. So I'm like, if you have listened to any podcast I'm on, I share consistently. I was jobless. After my PhD, I got on LinkedIn and started really marketing myself aggressively. So I'm like, just listen to I want to refer them all to the podcast. But I would say most of the people that reach out are either in HR. Sometimes it's an employee who heads an employee resource group. So when it was someone reached out to me from that large consulting company that we talked about, it was the head of the African American employee resource group at that company. Right. So she was like, well, we have a limited budget and blah, blah, blah. So sometimes it's someone in that situation. And I find that when it's an employee resource group reaching out, there are sometimes those budgetary concerns, but I don't compromise with my rate. You can just
ask like, hey, maybe you all can, some of my other clients have been able to afford this by co-sponsoring, but otherwise this is the set budget. Let me know if you'd like to talk further, but my rates aren't negotiable. Because you don't even need to have a call to figure that out. If you all don't have the money, we don't have to have a call. I mean, we could connect if we're in the same city or if we're at the same event, or I'm happy to keep you on my email list, which is why it's good to have that newsletter. But I totally understand that. Like, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole of how do you, I don't know if they have a budget. I don't know. No, you should always use sales language. I think that gets people on track. Like, I know you said pick your brain. Are you all interviewing for a consultant to help you solve this problem? Like that, just be direct. I think people totally get it. I don't have any problems talking about money. I think people get it too. They get that I wouldn't go to your job and say, hey, let me take 2 hours away from your actual job for free so I can learn something that solely benefits me. Yeah. And you'll never hear from me again. Does that sound like a good idea to you? No.
Exactly. So it's like, it's really being firm. So I would encourage, and I know for women especially, it's hard for us because we're like, well, I don't want to no, you need to state your rate. And what I did is I created a brag sheet and just keep it on my computer and I update it so that anytime I'm feeling a little bit like, am I asking for too much money? I look through my brag sheet and I'm like, no, I'm not asking for too much money because I've spoken at this company and I have these credentials. And it seems so like you want to be humble and you don't want to come off as like, I'm the greatest person in the world. But at the end of the day, that's the mindset you have to have because you can't let these companies sort of, if they think you're going to accept the speaking engagement for $500, trust and believe they're going to pay you $500. If they know that. And also, I think it says something about the quality of your work if you're charging a higher rate for it. If I know we got the speaker for only $500, I would sort of question the quality of that individual's work because I feel like often we associate higher price with higher quality. So that's what I would also be thinking of too. So I would just be like, this person was willing to do it for $500. Are they like, do they really have their credentials? So I think looking at that brag sheet has really helped me. And I just remind myself of why, because, I still now even struggle with, I'm not charging $10,000. And this person I met in May said, you need to be charging $10,000. She said, if I were you, I'd be charging $10,000. And I was like, I can't charge $10,000. I don't have, and it's a constant imposter syndrome.
Definitely charge $10,000.
I don't have enough credentials for $10,000. This is
you have a doctorate. That's there is not another credential that's higher in the academic space.
That's what she said. And she's like, you have a doctor in the space and you're a Black female, a young Black female. She was like, no, you need to be. And my husband was like, yeah, charge $10,000.
I know, husband. They know the truth.
Yeah, he's like, let me be a stay-at-home dad. But it's tough. It's like a mindset thing that you have to shift and say, I am worth this money.
Felicia Hatchard, I think it's her interview. She talks about that and her rates and how to get those rates up and why she charges what she charges and kind of how she targets the conferences that can definitely pay that. So I am all with the hubby. Okay, raise those rates. Just look at other speakers that charge it and see where they're speaking and whether those organizations can bring on an additional speaker. But I am with him. Charge $10,000 plus dollars.
Yeah. And what he always says is he's like, you don't do this for, this isn't your full-time job. So if they don't want to pay your rate, walk away. You're not going to lose sleep over it. You're not losing a meal because you have a full-time job already.
And that's a negotiation tactic. People who are willing to walk away from the negotiation table will always be in the best position because you're not desperate. And I think that is critical if you're going to negotiate. But this has been amazing. We could talk about this stuff all day.
I know.
Where can people find you? Where would you want people to go if they want more information about your speaking topics, what you offer, or to connect with you on LinkedIn?
So my website is drjanicegassam.com. And my LinkedIn is Janice Gassam. It's Gassam. And I'm on Instagram at Janice J Nice. So I'm always on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm not on, and I know you have a Facebook group and I'm like, oh, Ashley, I need you to bring this group to another platform because I'm like, I don't get on Facebook or Twitter that much, but I think you had said, or one of your previous guests had said, focusing on the social media that you get your leads from and don't try to spread yourself too thin. Yep. So I definitely take that into consideration. And I haven't found a lot of success on Facebook or Twitter. So I stick to where I found success, which is LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yes. And your audience is definitely on LinkedIn. And you're doing a great job with that. So
thank you so much, Ashley.
Of course. I'll definitely link to her website and it links to all her social media channels in the upper right-hand corner. So reach out to her, connect with her on LinkedIn to see how she has blown up her brand through that platform. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and for joining us on the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely.
All right. Wasn't that interview amazing? If you're anything like me, you have pages full of notes. But here's the thing. Before you head out, I want you to go to facebook.com and join the Speak Your Way to Cash Facebook group. That is where I am. That's where a ton of other speakers are, a ton of other people who listen to the show. We all congregate there and chat. And it's 100% free. Now, if you're ready to take your speaking career to the next level, I have two ways for you to do that. One, you can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/SYWTC live replay and pick up the live replay. That training is 7 modules, chock full of information. It's crazy. Go over there, read all about it. Or if you want a more personal experience, you already know that you want to be a speaker. You're ready to fully commit and you want someone to walk you through it and save you tons of time Googling and doing it on your own, then book a VIP day with me. You can go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com, scroll down until you see the VIP day section and get more information on that there. All right. Thank you guys again for watching. Please do not forget to leave us a review. That is how we keep this train rolling and get some of the best speakers in the world to get on this show. So please, please, please leave a review. Shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, and Facebook in the Speak Your Way to Cash group, Instagram at The Ashley Nicole Show. And I'd be more than happy to chat with you and say hi. All right, y'all have an awesome, awesome day.